German pilots first saw RAF Spitfires over Dunkirk in May 1940. Franz Stigler wrote, "Superior maneuverability. Extreme caution advised." Werner Mulder said, "Fight vertically. Never try to turn with them." Julius Newman admitted, "The British have a fighter equal to ours, perhaps better." Adolf Galland famously requested, "I should like an outfit of Spitfires for my squadron." These were their first reactions. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. Franz Stigler pushed his Messerschmitt Bf 109 through the sky above the French coast near Calais. Below him, smoke rose from Dunkirk where British soldiers crowded the beaches. The evacuation had just begun. Behind Stigler, 3 other German fighters followed in loose formation. They had flown 6 missions in the past 3 days, and every single one had been easy. The Polish fighters in September barely got off the ground. French Moraine Saulnier and Curtis Hawks fell from the sky like autumn leaves. The Luftwaffe owned the sky, and every German pilot knew it. Stigler's radio crackled. His wingman reported aircraft approaching from England at 2 o'clock high. Stigler looked up and saw 6 dots in the distance. Probably hurricanes, he thought. They had fought hurricanes before. They were solid aircraft but predictable and slower than the Bf 109. The Germans climbed to engage, confident. This is what they did. This is what they had been doing for 8 months without any serious challenge. The dots grew larger. Something felt different. The silhouette was wrong, more elegant. Elliptical wings caught the afternoon sun. These were not hurricanes. The British aircraft dove toward them. Stigler's stomach tightened. They were fast, very fast. He pushed his throttle forward, climbing hard, trying to gain altitude advantage. The lead British fighter rolled inverted and pulled through, coming down on Stigler's No. 3 aircraft. Tracer fire streamed past. Stigler broke hard right, pulling his stick back, feeling the G-forces compress his chest. His Bf 109 was good in vertical maneuvers. He would outclimb them, then dive back with speed advantage. But the British fighter followed his turn and stayed with him, tightening inside his circle. Stigler pulled harder, his vision graying at the edges. The British aircraft pulled inside him again. Impossible. Nothing turned inside a Bf 109. Stigler's hands were shaking on the stick. 8 months of easy victories, and now this aircraft was outturning him like he was flying a transport plane. He rolled out and dove, using the Bf 109's superior dive speed. The British fighter did not follow into the dive. Smart. Stigler leveled out at 5,000 feet, his heart pounding, and looked back. The British aircraft was circling above, waiting. Stigler's No. 3 was gone. Just gone. A smoke trail headed toward the water. When he landed back at their field near St. Omer, Stigler's hands were still trembling as he filled out his report. Under enemy aircraft type, he wrote what the intelligence officer told him, Supermarine Spitfire. Under observations, he wrote, superior maneuverability. Extreme caution advised. That night in the officers' mess, no one wanted to talk about it. They had lost 5 aircraft over Dunkirk in 2 days. Not to anti-aircraft fire, not to accidents, but to British fighters. The victories in Poland and France had come so easily that this felt like walking into a wall in the dark. Hauptmann Werner Mulders, already an ace with 14 kills, sat with his pilots and tried to explain what he had learned. The Spitfire, he told them, was not like the French fighters. It turned better than anything they had faced. Its rate of roll was excellent. In a turning fight, the Spitfire would win. The only advantages the Bf 109 had were dive speed, climb rate, and cannon armament. Fight vertically, he said. Boom and zoom. Dive, shoot, climb away. Never try to turn with them. His pilots listened. Some of them were 19 or 20 years old. They had been flying for 6 months. They believed the Luftwaffe was invincible because until 2 days ago, it was. The evacuation from Dunkirk continued. The Luftwaffe flew hundreds of sorties trying to destroy the British Army on the beaches, but every time they approached, the Spitfires and Hurricanes were there. The RAF was flying from bases in southern England, crossing the Channel, fighting over Dunkirk, then returning to refuel and rearm. The Germans could not understand how the British always seemed to know they were coming. They did not yet grasp that Britain had a radar network, that ground stations were tracking every raid and directing fighters to intercept. Feldwebel Heinz Knock, a Bf 109 pilot with Jägerschwader 52, wrote in his diary after a mission over Dunkirk, "We met Spitfires today. I had heard about them but did not believe the reports. Now I believe. My friend Dieter is dead. His Bf 109 was shot to pieces in seconds. The Spitfire followed him through every maneuver. We could not help him. The statistics from Dunkirk were classified, but the pilots knew. They counted the empty chairs in the mess. They saw the replacement pilots arriving, young and scared. Between May 26 and June 4, the Luftwaffe lost over 240 aircraft. Many fell to anti-aircraft fire and accidents, yes, but many more fell to RAF fighters. The myth of easy air superiority began to crack. The Battle of Britain officially began on July 10, 1940. The Luftwaffe had 2,600 aircraft available. The RAF had about 640 fighters, roughly split between Spitfires and Hurricanes. On paper, the Germans should win easily. Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring told his pilots that Britain would be defeated in 4 weeks. Destroy the RAF, he ordered, and the invasion can proceed. The early raids targeted channel convoys and coastal installations. The Luftwaffe wanted to draw out the RAF fighters and destroy them. It worked, but not the way Göring expected. Lieutenant Julius Neumann, flying with Jägerschwader 27, encountered Spitfires for the first time on July 11. He was 22 years old, trained in 1939, and confident. His squadron attacked a formation of Hurricanes that were going after German bombers. Neumann locked onto a Hurricane's tail, closing to 200 meters. Easy kill. His finger was on the trigger when tracer fire ripped past his canopy. He broke left violently. A Spitfire flashed past so close he could see the pilot's face. The Spitfire pulled up, looped, and came back down. Neumann dove for the deck, pushing his Bf 109 to 400 miles per hour. The Spitfire stayed with him until he crossed back over the French coast. That evening, Neumann sat in his quarters and wrote a letter to his brother, also a pilot stationed in Poland. The British have a fighter that is equal to ours, he wrote, perhaps better in some ways. We were told this would be easy. It is not easy. Men are dying every day. The Spitfire that Neumann encountered had 8.303 caliber machine guns, 4 in each wing. When fired together, they put out 9,600 rounds per minute. The effective range was about 300 yards. The guns were set to converge at 250 yards, creating a cone of fire that could shred an aircraft in seconds. The Spitfire's elliptical wing design gave it exceptionally low wing loading, which meant a tight turning radius. At combat speeds around 250 miles per hour, a Spitfire could complete a 360-degree turn in roughly 16 seconds. The Bf 109 took about 20 seconds. 4 seconds does not sound like much. In combat, it was everything. It was the difference between getting guns on target or being the target. The Bf 109 had advantages. Its two 20mm cannons hit harder than machine guns. One good burst could destroy a Spitfire. The Bf 109 could outclimb the Spitfire by about 500 feet per minute. It could outdive it. The Bf 109's fuel-injected Daimler-Benz engine did not cut out in negative G maneuvers, while the Spitfire's Merlin engine with its float carburetor would sputter if the pilot pushed the nose down too hard. But these advantages required discipline and tactics. The young German pilots, accustomed to easy victories, often forgot their training when a Spitfire got on their tail. They turned. And when they turned, they died. Adler Tag, Eagle Day. Göring launched the main offensive. The plan was to destroy the RAF in 4 days through massive raids on airfields and aircraft factories. The Luftwaffe flew 1,485 sorties. They lost 45 aircraft. The RAF lost 13 fighters. Oberleutnant Gerhard Schopfel, an experienced pilot with Jägerschwader 26, shot down 4 Hurricanes in 6 minutes that afternoon. Then a Spitfire found him. Schopfel was good, one of the best, but the Spitfire pilot was better. They dog-fought for 3 minutes over Kent. Schopfel tried everything he knew, climbing spirals, split-S maneuvers, barrel rolls. The Spitfire matched him move for move. Finally, Schopfel dove for France at full throttle, using his one clear advantage. He made it back with bullet holes in his tail. In his combat report, Schopfel wrote, "The Spitfire is a dangerous opponent. It requires the highest level of skill to defeat. Our younger pilots are not prepared for this." The younger pilots were dying in large numbers. The Luftwaffe's training program, excellent in 1939, could not keep up with losses. New pilots arrived at Channel squadrons with 60 hours of flight time, no combat experience, and orders to escort bombers deep into England. The Bf-109's range was its fatal weakness. With external drop tanks, it could reach London with about 30 minutes of combat time. Without drop tanks, even less. The Bf-109 pilots had to fly to England, fight, and fly back, always watching their fuel gauges. If they got into an extended dogfight, they risked running dry over the channel. The Spitfire pilots knew this. They would extend fights, forcing the Germans to break off or run out of fuel. RAF intelligence had calculated the Bf-109's combat radius precisely. They directed Spitfire squadrons to intercept German formations on their return leg, when the Bf-109s were low on fuel and desperate to get home. August 18 became known as the hardest day. The Luftwaffe launched massive raids on RAF airfields. They lost 69 aircraft. The RAF lost 68, but 29 of those were destroyed on the ground. In the air, it was roughly even. This was not what Göring had promised. This was a war of attrition, and Germany was losing pilots faster than they could be replaced. Hauptmann Adolf Galland, one of the Luftwaffe's top aces, flew 3 missions that day. He shot down 2 Spitfires, but his wingman was killed. That evening, Göring summoned his fighter commanders to Carenhall, his estate near Berlin. The Reichsmarschall was furious. Why had the fighters not destroyed the RAF? What did they need? Galland's answer became famous: "I should like an outfit of Spitfires for my squadron." Göring stared at him. Galland did not smile. He meant it. The Spitfire, in Galland's assessment, was the better fighter. Not by much, but enough. In the hands of a good pilot, it was superior. And the RAF had good pilots fighting over their own territory, guided by radar, landing at bases 10 minutes away. The Germans were fighting at the extreme edge of their range, over enemy territory, with no radar, no ground control, and no rescue if they went down over England. They were escorting bombers, which forced them to fly slowly and predictably. And they were facing an opponent that would not break. September 15, 1940, would later be celebrated as Battle of Britain Day. The Luftwaffe launched 2 massive raids on London, over 1,000 sorties. They believed the RAF was nearly finished, down to its last few squadrons. They were wrong. The RAF had been saving reserves, rotating squadrons, and the aircraft factories were producing Spitfires and Hurricanes faster than they were being lost. When the German formations crossed the coast, they were met by over 300 fighters. Spitfires and Hurricanes attacked in waves. The bomber formations were torn apart. The Bf-109 escorts, low on fuel, could not stay to protect them. The Luftwaffe lost 56 aircraft that day. The RAF lost 29. Lieutenant Hans Eckhard Bob, flying with Jägerschwader 54, was shot down over London. He bailed out and was captured. In interrogation, British intelligence officers asked him about morale. Bob, 21 years old, told them the truth. "We thought it would be like France," he said. "We thought you would collapse. But you have the Spitfire, and you have pilots who know how to use it. We cannot win this." The Spitfire was not invincible. German pilots shot them down daily. Helmut Wick, Werner Molders, Adolf Galland, and others scored victories against Spitfires. But it required skill, tactics, and often numerical advantage. The easy kills were gone. Every combat was a deadly chess match. The Spitfire's reputation grew with every engagement. German pilots who survived encounters spread the word. In letters home, in conversations, in combat reports, the message was consistent: the Spitfire is a formidable aircraft. Respect it. Fear it. Never underestimate it. Feldwebel Wilhelm Balthasar, an ace with 23 victories, wrote to a friend in September, "The Spitfire can do things our bird cannot. It turns like a dream. In the hands of a skilled pilot, it is nearly impossible to shoot down. We have lost many good men to Spitfires. The British are not beaten. They will not be beaten." Oberst Theo Osterkamp, a fighter commander and veteran of World War I, submitted a report to Luftwaffe High Command. He was a realist, and he had watched his squadrons bleed for 3 months. His report was blunt. The RAF cannot be defeated by current tactics. The Bf-109's range is insufficient. The Spitfire is equal or superior in combat. British radar and ground control give them a decisive advantage. Losses are unsustainable. The report was ignored. Göring refused to accept that the Luftwaffe had met its match. But the pilots knew. In the officers' mess, in the cockpits, in the letters that would be found decades later in archives, the German pilots acknowledged what their commanders would not. The Spitfire changed everything. The Battle of Britain officially ended on October 31, 1940. The statistics would be debated for decades, but the outcome was clear. The Luftwaffe had failed to achieve air superiority. The invasion of Britain was postponed indefinitely. German losses: 1,977 aircraft, 2,662 aircrew killed or missing. RAF losses: 1,744 aircraft, 544 pilots killed. The Spitfire did not win the Battle of Britain alone. Hurricanes actually shot down more German aircraft, primarily because there were more of them and they focused on bombers while Spitfires engaged fighters. Radar was crucial. British determination was crucial. But the Spitfire became the symbol because it was the fighter that could meet the Bf-109 on equal terms and win. Lieutenant Ulrich Steinhilper, shot down and captured in October, later wrote about his first encounter with a Spitfire in July. "I was confident, even arrogant," he recalled. "I had shot down French fighters easily. I thought the British would be the same. Then I met a Spitfire over Dover. The pilot was good, and his aircraft was better than mine in a turning fight. I barely escaped. That day I learned respect. That day I learned fear." The psychological impact on the Luftwaffe was profound. For the first time in the war, German pilots faced an opponent they could not easily defeat. The aura of invincibility was shattered. Morale suffered. Pilots who survived tours over England were exhausted and traumatized. The easy victories of Poland and France felt like another lifetime. Hauptmann Hannes Trotloft, a squadron commander, wrote in November, "We have lost the best pilots. The replacements are boys with no experience. They see a Spitfire and panic. I cannot blame them. The Spitfire is a killing machine in the right hands. And the British have many pilots with the right hands." The Luftwaffe adapted. New tactics emerged. Fighter sweeps without bombers, trying to draw out the RAF on German terms. High-altitude attacks where the Bf-109's better ceiling gave advantage. Hit-and-run raids. But the fundamental problem remained. The RAF had an excellent fighter, flown by determined pilots, defended by radar, operating over home territory. In December 1940, Werner Molders, now a major with 54 victories, gave a lecture to new pilots. He spent an hour discussing the Spitfire, its strengths, its weaknesses, how to fight it, how to survive it. Never turn with a Spitfire, he emphasized. Use your speed. Attack from above, fire, and climb away. If a Spitfire gets on your tail in a turning fight, you will die. This is not opinion. This is mathematics. The new pilots listened. Some of them would be dead within weeks. The Battle of Britain was over, but the war continued. The Spitfire would continue to evolve, the Mark V, the Mark 9, the Mark 14. Each generation faster and more capable. The Bf-109 would evolve too, the F model, the G model, the K model. The two fighters would duel over Europe, North Africa, and the Mediterranean for 5 more years. But that first encounter, that summer of 1940, was when the legend was born. When German pilots who thought themselves invincible met an aircraft and an opponent that proved them wrong. The Spitfire's elliptical wings became a symbol of resistance. For the British, it represented defiance and survival. For the Germans, it represented the moment when the war stopped being easy. The experienced German pilots, the ones who survived dozens of missions, developed a dark respect for the Spitfire that bordered on superstition. They had their rituals before missions, their private fears they would not share with younger pilots. Hauptmann Joachim Muncheberg, an ace with over 40 victories by late 1940, admitted to a friend, "Every time I see a Spitfire, I feel it in my chest. Not panic, but caution. Respect. I have shot down many of them, yes, but I have also seen them shoot down better pilots than me. The difference between life and death against a Spitfire is often just luck. Being in the right position at the right moment. Having the sun behind you. Catching the pilot by surprise. In an equal fight, with equal pilots, the Spitfire wins more often than not." Major Helmut Wick, who would be shot down and killed by a Spitfire in November 1940, wrote in his diary in September, "I have 56 victories now. 23 are Spitfires. Each one was difficult. Each one could have killed me instead. The younger pilots think I am fearless. They are wrong. I am very afraid of the Spitfire. Fear keeps me alive. Fear makes me careful. The pilots who do not fear the Spitfire are the ones who do not come back." The English Channel became a graveyard for German pilots. The cold water, barely 60 degrees Fahrenheit even in summer, gave a pilot perhaps 30 minutes before hypothermia set in. Those shot down over the Channel had to choose, bail out and hope for rescue, or try to make it back to France on a dying engine. Oberleutnant Franz von Vera, shot down in September, chose to bail out over England rather than risk the Channel. He was captured but later escaped and made it back to Germany. In his debriefing, he told intelligence officers, "The Channel is more frightening than the Spitfires. At least with a Spitfire, you have a chance to fight back. In the water, you just wait to die. I saw 3 of my friends go down over the Channel. None were recovered." The fear of the Channel added another layer of psychological pressure. German pilots were not just fighting the RAF, they were fighting geography and fuel gauges and the cold mathematics of range. Every mission was a calculated gamble. Lieutenant Erwin Lakoff described it precisely: "You cross the Channel knowing you have maybe 40 minutes before you must turn back. Then you see Spitfires. You engage. You burn fuel. You break off. You check your gauge and feel your stomach drop. Do you have enough? Will you make it?" Sometimes the answer is no. I have seen good men ditch their aircraft 50 meters from the French coast, so close but not close enough. The Channel takes them anyway. As summer turned to autumn, German tactics began to evolve out of necessity. The simple dive and attack methods that worked against Polish and French fighters were suicide against Spitfires. Experienced pilots like Werner Molders and Adolf Galland developed new approaches. They emphasized altitude advantage above all else. Get high, stay high, dive on the enemy with speed, fire a quick burst, then climb away before the Spitfires could turn into them. They called it boom and zoom, and it was the only way to survive. But it required discipline that many young pilots did not have. The instinct when an enemy got on your tail was to turn and fight. Against a Spitfire, that instinct was fatal. Major Gunther Rall, who would become one of Germany's highest-scoring aces, flew his first missions against Spitfires in August 1940. "I watched 2 of my squadron mates die in my first week," he recalled after the war. Both made the same mistake. A Spitfire got behind them, and instead of diving away, they tried to turn. The Spitfire turned inside them and shot them down. After that, I never forgot the rule: never turn with a Spitfire. By early October, the strain on Luftwaffe fighter squadrons was visible to everyone. Units that had started the battle with full strength were down to half their aircraft and pilots. The replacement pilots lasted an average of just 4 missions before being killed, wounded, or captured. Hauptmann Horst Tietzen, a squadron leader with Jägerschwader 51, wrote in his personal journal, "We are losing this battle. The high command will not admit it, but every pilot knows. The Spitfire is winning. Not because it is so much better than our Bf 109, but because the British use it so well. They have radar, they fight over their own land, and they will not give up. Meanwhile, we fly to the edge of our fuel range, fight, and pray we have enough fuel to get home. Too many do not make it home." The fuel problem became increasingly critical. Luftwaffe pilots knew they had perhaps 20 to 30 minutes of combat time over England before they had to turn back. The Spitfire pilots exploited this ruthlessly. They would engage, disengage, and engage again, forcing the Germans to burn fuel in combat maneuvers. Then, as the Bf 109s turned for home, the Spitfires would attack again, catching German pilots who could not afford to fight because their fuel gauges showed red. Dozens of Bf 109s ditched in the English Channel, their engines silent, fuel tanks empty. The pilots who survived the ditching faced hours in the cold water, hoping for rescue. Many were never found. Years after the war, Oberst Adolf Galland was asked about the Spitfire. He was in his 50s, living in Argentina, far from the battles of his youth. "It was a beautiful aircraft," he said. "Elegant, deadly. We respected it because we had to. Many of my friends died fighting Spitfires. When you saw those elliptical wings coming at you, your heart rate increased. Every time. Even after hundreds of missions, even after you learned the tactics, there was always that moment of fear. Because you knew that if the pilot was good, and many of them were very good, you might not go home." Werner Molders, before his death in 1941, told a group of new pilots, "The Spitfire taught us humility. We thought we were invincible. We thought no one could match us. The Spitfire proved us wrong. It is a hard lesson, paid for in the blood of good men. Learn from it. Respect your enemy. Respect his aircraft. And never, ever think you cannot be beaten." The technical specifications tell part of the story. The Spitfire's superior turn rate, its excellent roll rate, its 8 machine guns creating a devastating cone of fire. The Bf 109's better climb rate, its cannon armament, its fuel injection system. These are measurable advantages, numbers on paper. But the real story is in the letters, the diaries, the combat reports, the interviews after the war. It is in the voice of Franz Stigler, shaking after his first encounter over Dunkirk. In Heinz Knock's diary entry about his friend Dieter. In Julius Neumann's letter to his brother. In Gerhard Schopfel's combat report. In Adolf Galland's famous request to Göring. In Hans Eckhard Bob's admission to his captors. In Wilhelm Balthasar's letter. In Ulrich Steinhilper's memoir. These men were not cowards. They were professional military pilots, many of them highly skilled, some of them aces. They had proven themselves in combat. But the Spitfire forced them to confront their mortality in a way the Polish and French fighters never did. By late September, the Luftwaffe's losses were mounting in ways that could not be hidden. Every night, mechanics counted the aircraft that did not return. Every morning, new names appeared on the missing list. The replacement pilots arriving from training schools in Germany were younger and less experienced than ever before. Oberst Werner Molders watched these new pilots with growing concern. They had been taught to fly the Bf 109, yes, but they had not been taught to survive against a Spitfire. That was something you could only learn in combat, and many did not survive their first encounter long enough to learn anything. One young pilot, barely 19 years old, approached Molders after a briefing in late September. "Herr Oberst," he asked, "is it true what they say about the Spitfire? That it cannot be beaten?" Molders looked at the boy's eager face and felt a wave of sadness. "It can be beaten," he said carefully. "But only if you follow the rules. Only if you remember your training. Only if you do not panic when you see those elliptical wings." The young pilot nodded, trying to look confident. 3 days later, he was dead, shot down over Kent by a Spitfire pilot from No. 602 Squadron. German intelligence officers tried to understand what made the Spitfire so effective. They collected fragments from shot-down aircraft, interviewed captured RAF pilots, and studied gun camera footage. The technical details were clear enough: the elliptical wing design, the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, the 8 machine guns. But the numbers on paper did not explain why German pilots kept dying. The intelligence reports could measure turn radius and climb rate, but they could not measure the psychological impact of facing an aircraft that refused to be intimidated. Major Hans von Hahn, an intelligence officer with the Luftwaffe, wrote in a classified report from August 1940, "The British pilot's confidence in his Spitfire is absolute. He will engage superior numbers without hesitation." This confidence, combined with the aircraft's capabilities, makes every encounter dangerous. Our pilots report a level of aggression from RAF fighters that we did not see in Poland or France. The letters German pilots sent home told a story their commanders did not want to hear. Censors tried to remove references to losses and difficulties, but the truth slipped through. Lieutenant Paul Tem wrote to his family in August, "The English are not like the French. They do not give up. Every day we fly, and every day we fight these Spitfires. They are very good aircraft. Please do not worry about me, but please pray for my safe return." Tem was shot down on September 7 over the Thames estuary. He survived with burns and was captured. Feldwebel Anton Hafner wrote, "Mother, I cannot tell you details, but know that the fighting here is harder than we expected. The English have a fighter plane that is as good as ours, maybe better. Many of my friends are gone. I think of home every day." These letters, found in archives decades later, reveal the human cost of the battle. Behind every statistic was a young man far from home, flying missions he increasingly doubted he would survive. The first time a German pilot saw a Spitfire, really saw it, not as a distant dot but as an aircraft on his tail, matching his turns, closing the distance, tracers reaching out, that was when the certainty died. That was when the invincibility ended. That was when they understood that this war would not be won easily. That the British would not surrender. That some of them would not survive. They said it in different ways, these German pilots. Some with technical precision, analyzing turn rates and climb performance. Some with stark honesty, admitting fear. Some with grudging respect for a worthy opponent. Some with anger at their commanders for underestimating the enemy. But they all said essentially the same thing: the Spitfire was not supposed to exist. In the world Göring promised them, in the easy victories of Poland and France, there was no room for an enemy fighter that could match the Bf 109. But it did exist. It was real. It was there over Dunkirk, over the Channel, over England, day after day, flown by pilots who would not quit. And when they saw it for the first time, when those elliptical wings appeared in their sights or, worse, appeared behind them, the German pilots understood the truth. The war had changed. The easy days were over. They were no longer invincible. They were just men in machines, fighting other men in machines. And sometimes, the other machine was better.